Today I want to kick off the week with a fan favorite concept, the My Guys. Basically, in short, I'm going to give you guys 5 players that in every single fantasy draft that I'm in, I'm targeting these guys, even if that means going out of my way to get them. Kyler Murray, now he is my guy this year. He is the guy that in every single draft I'm going to be going out of my way to target. This is the guy that's going in the early 7th round, anywhere from the quarterback 8 to the quarterback 10, depending on what, of course, website you're using. But I have him all the way up on my boards as the quarterback 4 or the quarterback 5. That's how much I believe in K1, as this is a guy that you look at him and you say, well, he hasn't really had a lot of playoff success in his career. That's true, but at the same time, this is fantasy football. And for fantasy, he's been an elite option from day number 1 over his career. He's averaged just about 20 fantasy points a game. And when this dude returned from a devastating knee injury 2 years ago, of course, he returned at the midseason mark, this was a top 10 offense. And there wasn't much around Kyler Murray. It was a poor offensive line, poor coaching staff. Not a big fan of John Gannon yet. An older James Conner. His receiving core, his best receiver was Greg Dortch on some weeks there. But outside of that, Kyler didn't have a lot around him to succeed in this offense last year when he came back. But it was still a top 10 offense in yards per play, and of course, total points. Kyler was the energizer that this offense desperately needed. But when we focus just on fantasy football, this is a guy that was the quarterback 9 throughout his stretch last season. And since over his career, I'll say this. This is a guy that gives you elite rushing upside. So over his career averages are about 38 rushing yards a game and just under 700 total rushing yards every single season. Now, you look at that and say 38 yards a game, that's not much for fantasy. But when you look at those two numbers, only 5 quarterbacks since 2000 have met those marks. Guys like Cam Newton, guys like, of course, Lamar Jackson. Those are some guys that have the elite rushing upside that Kyler Murray does. This is an offense that last year was top 10 in all those metrics, and they've added maybe the greatest wide receiver prospect ever in, of course, Kyler Murray, or Marvin Harrison Jr. So Marvin Harrison joins the offense with Trey McBride, with James Conner. The O-line has gotten better. This team should be better in general. And on top of that, the biggest reason I like Kyler Murray is if you miss out on guys like Josh Allen, if you miss out on Jalen Hurts, 2 top-end guys that you have to pay a pretty penny for, you can get Kyler in the 7th round. And to me, as well as a lot of other people, we believe he can finish as a top 5 to top 10 fantasy quarterback. So stack up at other positions and wait. Grab an Anthony Richardson. Grab Kyler Murray down the board of your drafts. You'll have a better overall team. Now, the only cons here that I worry about is his injury history. Of course, he just came off of a big injury over the last 2 years or so. And the other thing is that he's just not as safe as the Josh Allens, the Pat Mahomes, the Jalen Hurts of the world. So if you don't want to take the risk of drafting a Kyler Murray, if you don't want to, risk your quarterback not performing at a quarterback 1 level, then go after those top guys. But I believe that Kyler Murray can perform at that elite level, and that's why he is my go-to, my guy in every single fantasy draft this season. But let's get into number 2 here with Alvin Kamara. This is a guy that's going in the middle of the 4th, kind of late 4th, depending on which website you're drafting on. But in general, the mid-4th round. And this is a guy that is drafted as like the running 16, generally across the board. I have him as a top 10 guy. I believe this is a guy that, even though he's older, he can still perform at a high level, even though all the fantasy statistics say otherwise. Because last year when he played, let's remember that he only played from weeks 4 to 17. He missed a little bit of the season with a suspension. But throughout the time that he played last season, he was the running back 3 in full PPR formats. And throughout that stretch, he commanded 22% of the target share. And for reference, the guy that had the most target share in the NFL last year was CeeDee Lamb. And he, of course, was in a league of his own. But Alvin Kamara at 22% is not that far behind in this New Orleans Saints offense. Now, this is a guy that has Captain Checkdown as his quarterback in Derek Carr. And I don't say that to, dismiss Derek Carr and his ability on the field. But in his career, he checks down more than the average quarterback, a lot more than the average quarterback. So this is the guy that in Alvin Kamara is still going to get a lot of receiving upside and a lot of receiving work with Derek Carr at the helm. And even if Spencer Rattler does take over, rookie quarterbacks like to get the ball out quick and efficiently. Best way to do that is to a tight end or a running back. The offensive line has gotten better. This is a team that doesn't have many big changes on the offensive side of the ball. So if he's healthy, I don't see why this guy can't come back and have similar production from last year, but now to be a running back one throughout the entire season. Now, I do understand that some cons here about Alvin Kamara. I know he's been dealing with a little bit of a back injury, but all reports say, per the Saints beat writers, he's going to be back here to start the season and have a full workload because there's not much competition behind him. Kendre Miller hasn't shown much. Of course, Jamal Williams was brought there to practically just be a goal line guy. Other cons, Alvin Kamara is 29, right? I did a video on my channel where we talked about how to find a running back one. If you are older than 28, history's not on your side. I'll say that. But again, Alvin Kamara has missed a couple weeks last year. He still should be fresh going into this year. But outside of his age, I don't have many concerns about Alvin Kamara because of his receiving upside. But that's going to do it for Alvin Kamara. We're going to go to Cooper Kupp. So we'll get back to Ladd McConkey. Keep that in mind. This is another guy in Cooper Kupp who's older, and I understand that. There's risk there with an older guy in Cooper Kupp. But this is a guy that is going as the 20th wide receiver off the board. He, to me, is a top 12 level wide receiver. He's on his revenge tour. All the camp reports say that this is a guy that the offense runs through him. And of course, we've heard the news about Puka's recent injuries. He might not be exactly ready to go for week number 1. So if Puka's not ready to go for 1, or even if he is, he might need some time to ramp up and kind of recover from these injuries. So Cooper Kupp is going to be the go-to guy. He's going to be the main focus of this offense. But when we look at last year, when we look at Puka's emergence coming out of nowhere, right? This is a guy in Puka Nacua who was electric. But Cooper Kupp, when he played last year with Puka on the field, Cooper led the team in third down and red zone targets when both of those guys were on the field. So if you're getting that elite target share, like 3-4 rounds later than Puka Nacua, who's going in the first or the second round, why not take the shot on a guy like Cooper Kupp? Because outside of his injury history, this is a guy that has the potential to win you your fantasy championships. The only other cons that I have, of course, injury history for Cooper Kupp, Stafford's health. Of course, Matthew Stafford's going through a little bit of injuries, and that's really all it comes down to with Cooper Kupp. How healthy is Matt Stafford? If Matt Stafford is healthy, both of these guys are going to be wide receiver ones because this offense is that good in Los Angeles. But Cooper Kupp in the middle to late fourth round, I'm targeting him in every single league. Let's talk about Ladd McConkey. I teased you guys there, but let's get back into it. This is a guy that's going in the late 8th round, maybe early 9th, depending on your league mates, and they might not know as much as you if you're a fantasy football addict. But this is a guy, of course, great separator, great route runner there at the collegiate level. He's going as the 42nd wide receiver off the board, and I have him as a top 28, top 25 level wide receiver in fantasy this season. He's going into a situation where, sure, it's going to be a run-focused offense because that's what Jim Harbaugh has done his entire career as a coach. He's won everywhere he's gone, so why not stick to the run-focused offense? Now, Ladd McConkey is going into a situation where he might not have the elite upside as some of the top guys on our boards, but he's going to be very safe. And I think if there's going to be anybody that could be a Puka Nacua from this year, it's no doubt Ladd McConkey. This is a guy that he's a great separator. He has great hands. His quarterback is elite in Justin Herbert. And his draft price, you cannot go wrong to take a shot on a guy like Ladd McConkey late in your draft. So why not take that shot late? The only cons is it's a run-focused offense. He doesn't have the upside of other top guys, but Justin Herbert's injuries as well. Justin Herbert, of course, had that foot injury. This is a guy that should be he should be back for week 1, right? And the only other thing I'll say about Ladd McConkey is if this team needs to throw the football, there's no more Keenan Allen. There's no more Mike Williams. It is now Ladd McConkey. So the go-to target in this offense, Ladd McConkey. That's why so many people are high on him this season. But those are your 2 receivers. Let's get into the tight end position here. Of course, we'll talk about another guy over there in Phoenix, Arizona, Trey McBride. This is a guy that is going in the late 4th round. So again, I keep mentioning these draft prices and where they're going because they're great draft prices. And for Trey McBride, he's going as the 4th tight end off the board, rightfully so. I have him as my tight end 3. So he's right in that range. You get him at a bit of a discount, though. And to me, this is a guy in Trey McBride that is the go-to target in his offense. His only true competition for receiving work is an older James Conner and a unproven at the NFL level, Marvin Harrison Jr. I understand that Marvin Harrison is an elite player, maybe the best wide receiver prospect ever, but he is still unproven at the NFL level. So Trey McBride comes in as the sole go-to guy in this offense. He was the tight end 7 last year, and he was the tight end 4 in the weeks that Kyler Murray played. So from weeks 10 to 17, about a 2-month span, he was elite, and he was great throughout that stretch. The biggest reason why I like Trey McBride is he gives us that elite upside, that safe floor that I like to preach about on my channel, but you can get him 2 rounds cheaper sometimes than the guys going ahead of him. Guys like Sam Laporta at the 1-2 turn, or guys like Travis Kelce there in the middle of the 2nd round or sometimes the 3rd round. You can get this guy 2 rounds later, and you can stack up. You can use those 2nd and 3rd round selections on Devon Achane. You can use them on, your favorite 3rd round prospect or player. So I say, why not? Grab your first 3 players, your favorite 3 in the first 3 rounds, and then grab your elite tight end. And that's just kind of my philosophy with it. Now, again, if you can get the stack of Trey McBride and Kyler Murray, that is my favorite stack this year. So a little added bonus on there for you guys. But that is my 5. Kyler Murray, Alvin Kamara, Cooper Kupp, Ladd McConkey, and Trey McBride. 3, of course, older guys at the top. At the bottom, of course, you have some young guys. And Ladd McConkey, Trey McBride, all 5 of these guys I think that can be league winners. Now, they aren't the 5 best players at their position, but these are guys that you can get at values that give you stability and crazy upside. Let's get into some rookies here, though. Of course, I've told you guys at the top of the show that there was going to be some bonus guys at the end. Now, I wanted to throw these guys out there for not dynasty leagues necessarily, but these are guys to go after. From rounds 10 on in your drafts, go after these guys. Why not, right? Because after round 10, it's really, why do you want to draft Darius Slayton? Why do you want to draft older guys like that? Go after these young rookies that have elite ceilings is what I'm getting at. We're going to start here with Jayden Daniels. Of course, at the quarterback position, this is a guy that gives you elite rushing upside, just like Kyler Murray. This is a guy that has great weapons around him. Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, even though he's fighting for playing time. Ben Sinnott, of course, he has a great running back room. The offensive line has improved as well. His draft price for a potential quarterback 1, going into I think 12th round at this point for current ADP, is out of this world. You can get him, and he could possibly be a top 10 guy in an offense that is coached ultimately by Cliff Kingsbury. If you didn't watch Cliff Kingsbury when he was with Kyler Murray, well, it was an air-it-out offense, and Kyler Murray had great fantasy stats on a year-in and year-out basis. Jayden Daniels plays a lot like Kyler Murray. The only worries I have about Jayden Daniels is his decision-making, and I mean that in the sense that at LSU, this was a guy that put himself in harm's danger a lot more than he needed to. This is a guy that lowered his shoulder against defensive players more than he needed to, so his health could be a concern. But outside of that, he's a rookie quarterback. How quickly can he adapt to NFL defenses and, just be an elite player in year number 1? Again, for rookies, it's a very hard position to dominate from year number 1. That's why we don't see elite quarterbacks dominate or rookie quarterbacks dominate at an elite level early on. That's why we only have guys like Andrew Luck, CJ Stroud, Cam Newton, and of course, Justin Herbert from a few years ago. Let's get into some other guys here. And we're going to talk about some guys over there in the Carolinas, an offense that I think is going under the radar. And on my channel in a week or so, I'm going to have, of course, a co-host on, and we're going to be talking about our fantasy or our record predictions, right? Which teams we think can make the playoffs and which teams we think can surprise a lot of people. Outside of the Cardinals, I think the Panthers could be that team this year that I won't say make the playoffs, but they can be knocking on the door with the Dave Canales hire. And I also think it's because this is a team that has brought in 2 dynamic rookies from the University of Texas, One of them being John Brooks. Of course, he was on the screen there just a moment ago. If you watch this guy at Texas, of course, he was electric, right? This is a guy that was a home run hitter, some would say. You get him the ball in space, you let him do his work. That is how he dominated at the collegiate level. Of course, he also waited his time behind Roschon Johnson and, of course, Bijan Robinson. But Jonathan Brooks had the argument to be the best running back prospect in this past NFL draft. And the only worries that I have about him is the fact that he has a current injury. He's going to have to miss the first month or so of the season, and then you also have to expect a little bit of a ramp-up period. So this is the guy that is going to be a second half gem. So you want to draft this guy and stash him. So if your league has IR spots, perfect. Draft Jonathan Brooks in the 8th or 9th round, throw him on your IR, and he could be a league winner down the stretch of the season because they brought in, of course, Dave Canales. And Dave Canales was the offensive coordinator in Tampa last year. Rachaad White was a top 5 running back in Dave Canales' scheme. Bryce Young checks down just as much as Baker Mayfield. So I can see John Brooks as an overall better player than Rachaad White as far as a talent perspective. He's not proven yet, but as far as a talent, I'm taking Jonathan Brooks over Rachaad White. Rachaad White dominated. So if you get the better player now in Jonathan Brooks, and with a check down quarterback in Bryce Young, in a Dave Canales scheme, I like the upside of Jonathan Brooks. Now, again, he's a little bit more expensive than Jayden Daniels and the next guy, but go after him. Why not? It's the middle of your drafts. We're shooting for the stars here, right? We are shooting for the championships. The last guy I want to talk about here is another guy that, of course, Hook'em Horns is over there in Carolina from the University of Texas. This is a guy that's going undrafted in a lot of leagues, and it might shock a lot of you at home, so hear me out. But Ja'Tavion Sanders. This guy reminds me, and no, to throw it out there, I'm not a fan of the Texas Longhorns, but Ja'Tavion Sanders reminds me of a young David Njoku. And if you watched how the Browns played with Flacco last season, this is it was an offense where we ran a lot of tight end screens, a lot of delay routes, a lot of get the ball to David Njoku and get the, what out the way, right? Let him go to work. That is how David Njoku succeeded so much last season. Now, for Ja'Tavion, he reminds me of that. His play style, his athletic ability, right? And this is a guy that's going into an offense, Dave Canales' scheme, I want to throw out there yet again. He's going to be the safety blanket for Bryce Young from day number 1. And there's no true competition for Ja'Tavion Sanders from day 1. Tommy Tremble, that's not going to skip away from drafting Ja'Tavion Sanders. So the only cons I'll say about him is that there's no guaranteed work because he's a rookie. He's unproven. And this is a guy that, at the end of the day, how much do you want to trust Bryce Young to bounce back and to be this quarterback that he was drafted to be just a year ago? Of course, he struggled in his rookie season. And, of course, I think that was magnified a lot by how bad the offensive line was. And, of course, how good C.J. Stroud was, right, the pick behind him. But Bryce Young, I still believe in. I think he could be a above-average quarterback in the league. And if Dave Canales can't fix him, nobody can. But for Ja'Tavion Sanders, I like that upside there. That's probably in the last round of your drafts. If not, what I like to do, draft TJ Hockenson, right? Draft him in like the 10th, 11th, 12th round. Put him on your IR, and then go out there and pick up a guy in Ja'Tavion Sanders in your week 1 waivers. I love that pickup, right? And, hey, if Ja'Tavion Sanders doesn't work for the first month, just release him. And then you got TJ Hockenson coming back. Something I like to do in my fantasy drafts.